In the silent, glowing chambers of the Galactic Council, the oldest voices once whispered truths that chilled the bones of even the strongest species. Thousands of years ago, before the stars were mapped and before the great alliances were formed, there was a hidden fear among the elders, an old fading memory buried in the deepest vaults of their knowledge. It spoke of a world far from the center of the galaxy, a small, unimportant planet floating alone in a quiet corner. The planet was Earth, and its people, humans, were still living in caves, using fire to fight the darkness. But even then, the ancient watchers observed them, secretly watching their violent struggles, their endless wars, and their strange ability to rise again, no matter how many times they were broken. The elders didn't fear humans because of their weapons or their strength, but because of their nature. Humans learned from pain. They grew stronger through loss. They adapted not just to survive, but to win, again and again. The elders had never seen anything like it. Other species avoided war. Humans embraced it, mastered it, and used it to grow faster than any natural law should allow. It was not evolution. It was something far more dangerous, unbreakable will. The warning was recorded carefully and placed deep in the Council's archives, where only the oldest members could access it. It spoke clearly. If this species reaches the stars, the galaxy will change forever. They cannot be controlled, only respected or feared. But as time passed, the warning became just another old file among millions. The Council changed. New generations took control, and the elders became silent shadows in the background, barely listened to anymore. The galaxy had become peaceful, united, and organized. It was hard to imagine a single species threatening that balance. The elders were treated like storytellers, their words seen as ancient paranoia from a more violent age. So when Earth finally sent out its first signal into space, announcing its existence with joy and wonder, the galaxy welcomed humanity like a curious child. Some races were even excited, calling humans the newest voice in the choir of stars. But deep inside the quiet halls of the elders, a few still remembered the warning. They knew the signal was not a song of peace. It was the sound of a storm slowly waking. Humanity's entry into the galactic community was seen as a hopeful moment by most. Their technology was primitive, but their curiosity was unmatched. They learned languages faster than expected. They adapted to low gravity, strange food, and even harsh climates in record time. While most new species took decades to settle in, humans were ready in just a few years. Some admired this. They said humans were eager learners, brave explorers. But others, especially the older members of the Council, felt a cold chill growing stronger each day. They saw how quickly humans learned military tactics, how they understood weapons they had never seen before, how they even improved alien systems without formal training. No one else had ever done that. Yet whenever someone brought up the old warning, they were laughed off. "They're just creative," said one senator. "Every species brings something new. Let's not be afraid of innovation." And so the Council chose comfort over caution. One elder, named Vekarus, refused to stay silent. He was one of the last who had read the original observations, the first report written by those who saw Earth from afar. He spoke in a public meeting, warning them that humans were not evil, but they were not to be underestimated. "They smile, they share, they learn," Vekarus said in a trembling voice. "But when they are pushed, they do not fall. They push back, and they do not stop." The chamber laughed politely, seeing his words as fear of change, a relic of old thinking. "They are like children," said another council member. "Let them grow. They'll learn peace like the rest of us." Vekarus sat down, knowing in his heart that the warning was now truly forgotten. The galaxy was not ready. The storm was coming, and no one believed it. Far away, on a new research outpost near the edge of human space, something strange happened. A group of scientists, both human and alien, discovered an ancient machine buried beneath the planet's surface. It was not human, not even from any known species. It had warnings carved into it in several dead languages. The humans wanted to study it, to open it, to see what secrets it held. The aliens hesitated, recognizing some of the warning signs, contacted the council, asking for advice. But by the time help arrived, the humans had already opened the device. What they found inside was unclear. Some said it was a weapon. Others claimed it was a map, a record of a lost war. But what happened next was undeniable. The device sent out a signal, deep, powerful, and old. Something had awakened. The humans showed no fear. They said knowledge was worth the risk. They called the event progress. The council called it reckless. Tensions began to rise. The elders, those who still remained, gathered quietly in their own chamber. They didn't speak much. They simply watched the events unfold, knowing deep inside that the truth had returned. The forgotten warning was no longer hidden in archives. It was alive, unfolding day by day, with every bold step humanity took. And it was only the beginning. When humanity first stepped onto the galactic stage, no one expected much from them. Their home planet was still recovering from pollution, war, and internal struggles. Their technology was young compared to other species, and their spaceships were simple, built more for survival than elegance. But there was something strange about humans that no one could quite understand. They didn't hesitate. They didn't fear the unknown. They threw themselves into every challenge with a boldness that confused and impressed the other species. While most civilizations took decades to learn the basics of galactic politics, humans mastered them in a few short years. They studied every species with great interest, not just to make peace, but to understand their strengths, weaknesses, and ways of thinking. Within a decade, humans had representatives in almost every sector of the Galactic Council. They had engineers working side by side with the most advanced species, sharing ideas, fixing old machines, and improving systems that others had stopped trying to understand long ago. What surprised everyone was not just how fast they learned, but how they changed the rules. Humans didn't follow the slow, careful path others had taken. They jumped steps, mixed ideas, broke limits, and created shortcuts that no one believed were possible. When alien scientists asked how they did it, humans simply said, "We tried something new." That sentence became a quiet warning across many planets. Something about their minds worked differently. Where others saw danger, humans saw opportunity. Where others stopped, humans moved forward. And when mistakes happened, they didn't break down. They got back up, adjusted, and tried again. Their spirit became a mystery, a force that couldn't be measured by logic or calculation. In training missions, they survived conditions that other species couldn't handle. They walked through storms, worked without rest, and even laughed in situations where others would panic. Alien commanders were both amazed and concerned. They started whispering that humans didn't just survive pain. They learned from it, and that made them dangerous. At first, the Council tried to see it positively. They believed humans would bring energy, creativity, and new life into the galaxy. And they were right. Human artists introduced new forms of expression, mixing alien cultures into their own. Their music, stories, and games spread quickly. On some planets, human culture became more popular than native traditions. This made some species nervous, especially those who had spent centuries protecting their customs. But humans didn't do it with force. They did it with curiosity, kindness, and persistence. That made it even harder to resist. Their influence grew faster than their population. Everywhere they went, humans made an impact. They fixed what was broken, questioned what was accepted, and challenged what was considered impossible. And all of this happened without a single act of aggression. That was what made their rise so unusual. There was no war, no conquest, no demand for power. It was simply the force of who they were, adaptable, stubborn, and full of fire. But not everyone saw their rise as a good thing. In the darker corners of the council, powerful voices began to whisper. They said humans were moving too fast, learning too much, spreading too far. They warned that soon, humans wouldn't just be members of the council, they would lead it. And that scared many old powers who had ruled for centuries. Quiet meetings were held. Reports were made. Every human success was now studied with suspicion. How did they figure out advanced propulsion so quickly? Why were they able to repair ancient technology that even the builders had forgotten? How could they defeat trained combatants in simulation fights without prior experience? The answers were always the same, because they learned fast, because they pushed limits, because they never gave up. The truth was, humans weren't perfect. They made mistakes, they had flaws, and they argued among themselves. But when they came together for a goal, nothing could. One event shook the council more than any other. On the icy moon of Sirius 9, an ancient reactor had begun to fail. The council had sent several teams over the years, but none had been able to fix it. The system was too old, the technology too outdated. It was marked as unsalvageable. Then a small human team volunteered to try. Everyone thought it was a waste of time. But the humans went anyway. In freezing winds and deadly storms, they stayed for weeks, studying, testing, and rebuilding. When they finally succeeded, and the reactor came back online, it shocked the entire sector. What was lost to time had been brought back to life by a species that wasn't even part of the council a decade ago. That single act changed everything. Suddenly, species that had ignored humans now wanted to trade with them. Others asked for their help, even their protection. Some offered alliances. The council tried to act calm, but they knew what was happening. Humanity was no longer just a new member. They were becoming a force that could shift the balance of power. The elders who were still alive began to grow restless. They remembered the old warning. They saw the signs clearly now. It wasn't about war or violence. It was about influence, adaptability, and the human ability to change everything they touched. The elders warned the council again. They said humanity's rise was not a wave to ride. It was a storm to prepare for. But once again, the council dismissed them. They haven't attacked anyone, one senator said. They're building, helping, growing. This is what we wanted. Peaceful progress. But deep inside, the fear had returned. The difference was that now, the fear was mixed with awe. No one could deny what they were seeing. Humanity was rising, not with weapons, but with ideas, courage, and something even more dangerous than strength: unstoppable will. For years, humanity had risen quietly, without force or threat, their growth powered by curiosity, courage, and a strange inner fire. They became builders, thinkers, explorers, and even healers. But no matter how peaceful their actions were, the speed of their progress created silent fear among the older species of the galaxy. Whispers turned to doubts, and doubts grew into suspicion. Some believed that humans were simply moving too fast, while others were certain that behind their smiles and friendly alliances, there was a hidden plan. The truth was that humans had no grand scheme. They just refused to slow down. They saw a problem and solved it, saw a challenge and conquered it. This relentless drive was natural for them, but terrifying to those who had ruled for centuries without change. And then, without warning, the first real test came, not from humanity, but from those who feared them most. It happened on the distant trade planet of Forces Prime, a place where all species came to share knowledge and goods. A sudden explosion rocked the human embassy there. Several delegates died. The shock was immediate. No one claimed responsibility, but security footage showed cloaked figures placing the devices. The council tried to cover it as an accident, but the truth spread fast. Someone had targeted the humans directly. In the past, such an act would have led to full war. But humanity surprised everyone again. Instead of responding with weapons, they sent a single message to the council. We ask only for the truth. Let justice speak before we act. This message confused many and impressed others. Some thought it was weakness, But those who knew humans better realized it was something far more dangerous, restraint backed by strength. Behind the scenes, human intelligence teams worked fast, tracing the attackers, following shadows, uncovering connections. And what they found was alarming. A secret group called the Preservers of Balance, made up of high-ranking members from older species, had formed a hidden alliance. Their goal was simple: slow down or stop humanity's rise before it was too late. They believed they were saving the galaxy from human domination, but they never expected to be caught. Within days, human diplomats revealed their findings at a council meeting. The evidence was clear. Several respected council members had supported the attack. The chamber fell into chaos. Some demanded arrests. Others denied everything. The accused members tried to twist the truth, calling humans manipulators and accusing them of creating fear on purpose. It was the turning point. For the first time, the galaxy saw not just the intelligence of humanity, but the strength behind it. The ability to strike, yet the wisdom to wait. But things didn't calm down. Instead, the situation grew worse. A fleet of ships belonging to one of the preservers suddenly entered human-controlled space near the mining planet Kiros V. They claimed it was a defensive patrol, but the move was clearly aggressive. Humans responded by moving their own ships to the border. But again, they didn't fire. They opened channels and offered peace talks. The council begged for calm. The galaxy held its breath. And then the first shot was fired, not by humans, but by the opposing fleet. A direct hit on a human cargo ship. Fire lit the stars. The war had begun, but it didn't unfold as anyone expected. The enemy believed that humans were not ready for war, that their peace-loving nature meant they lacked experience. They were wrong. Humanity had studied every ship, every tactic, every piece of war history across the galaxy. They had trained in silence, prepared quietly, and when the time came, they moved like a force of nature. In the first major battle near the asteroid belt of Saran III, human ships used unpredictable maneuvers and clever traps. The enemy fleet was torn apart in less than an hour. Every commander watching the battle saw something they could not explain. Humans thinking faster, reacting quicker, and adapting to every change with terrifying speed. Across the stars, opinions shifted. Some feared them even more. Others cheered them on, and many simply watched in awe. But the war wasn't about destruction for humans. It was about proving that they would not be hunted, not be silenced, not be broken. They didn't destroy enemy planets or target civilians. They only fought where they were attacked, and they offered surrender terms again and again. But their enemies refused, too proud to admit defeat. In the final battle above the moon of Halvanar, the enemy's command ship was surrounded. Human Marines boarded it not to kill, but to capture. Inside, they found leaders shaking with fear, not because of death, but because they had realized too late what they were facing. Humanity was not just another species. They were something new, something unstoppable, not because of power, but because of purpose. They didn't want to rule. They wanted to build a galaxy where change was possible, where progress was shared, and where fear could no longer hold back the future. When the war ended, the council was forced to change. The preservers were disbanded. Their members were punished. And for the first time, humanity was not just respected. They were feared and admired in equal measure. But the most surprising thing of all was what humans did after the war. They did not demand power or territory. They asked only for one thing: a promise from the council that such hidden threats would never be allowed again, to any species, ever. They used their victory not to rise above others, but to lift the galaxy into a new era of open truth. Many still didn't understand them. How could a species that fought like warriors still speak like dreamers? But perhaps that was the true mystery of humanity. They could be both, fierce and kind, strong and gentle, patient and fast. The first conflict was over, but its echoes would last forever. The galaxy now knew what the elders had warned long ago. Humanity was not just another race in the stars. They were the change that no one could stop, and they had just begun. The galaxy had long dismissed the old stories as legends, tales told by the elders to keep younger generations cautious of rising species. Among those stories was a forgotten warning whispered for centuries. If humanity ever leaves its homeworld, the stars will never be the same. No one took it seriously. Why should they? At the time, Earth was a quiet, undeveloped world, filled with creatures who barely knew how to cross their oceans. But time passed, and the humans changed. They advanced, built, connected, and within just a few hundred years, they'd reached beyond their skies. The elders watched in silence, remembering the ancient words that once seemed like superstition. Now, those words returned with weight. At first, humanity was welcomed politely, like a new guest entering an old and proud city. They were given trade routes, shown laws, and told to observe. But unlike others, they did not simply follow. They questioned, they improved, they reshaped every system they touched. Technology spread faster, new cures for old diseases were found, and old mysteries of the galaxy were solved by these newcomers who refused to stop learning. The Council of Galactic Harmony, made of the oldest and most powerful species, began to notice how fast humans were changing everything. They weren't conquering. They were influencing, transforming, and leading without asking for power. Some admired them, some feared them, and a few started whispering again about the elders' ancient warning. Behind the scenes, a few old races began digging into old records, searching for the origin of that forgotten prophecy. They found fragments, messages left behind by civilizations long gone, recordings buried under dust and time, all speaking of the same truth, that humanity had once risen before. Long ago, in a forgotten age, humans had already reached the stars. The deeper they searched, the more terrifying the truth became. According to one recovered archive from a destroyed world, humans had once built an empire so vast and so advanced that it became feared even by the gods of that age. But their strength was not in weapons. It was in understanding. They had cracked codes of time, consciousness, and even energy at the level of creation itself. They never ruled with terror, but their minds were faster, sharper, and always ahead. But then, something happened. The record spoke of a great silence that followed their rise, a sudden vanishing. Some believed the humans had destroyed themselves in their search for knowledge. Others said the galaxy had united against them in fear and wiped them out, leaving no trace but warnings buried in myths. Either way, it seemed history had started to repeat itself. The elders hadn't warned of humanity as a threat. They had warned of their return. But no one wanted to believe such stories. How could a species fall and rise again without memory of their past? That question was answered when a human archaeological team on a distant moon uncovered something strange. Technology far beyond anything they had built, but marked with Earth's genetic and cultural signatures. The scientists were confused. The device responded to their DNA, unlocking holograms of people who looked just like them, speaking in a language that had vanished millennia ago. The team sent the recordings to Earth and the Galactic Council. What the recordings revealed was impossible. A message from the past, from humans who had once ruled the stars, warning their future selves. To those who come after us, the message began, "You carried the same fire that we did. But with fire comes both light and destruction. Do not repeat our mistakes. We did not fall from weakness. We were erased because others feared what we might become. Remember this. When they fear you again, they will try again." The council panicked. The message confirmed everything the elders had tried to hide. Some members demanded the truth be buried. Others insisted it be shared. But it was too late. Humanity had already seen it, and with it they now understood why they had always felt different, why they learned faster, grew stronger, and questioned more than others. It was in their blood, a memory carried not in minds, but in their very genes. They had returned not to dominate, but to finish what was once stolen from them. For a short while, silence spread through the stars as everyone waited for what the humans would do. But instead of attacking, instead of demanding revenge, the humans did something no one expected. They continued as before, building, sharing, growing, but with one difference. Now they knew who they were, and they stopped hiding their full potential. They unlocked technologies that others thought were lost. They healed planets long considered ruined. They brought peace to regions that had been in war for centuries. But those who feared them most grew even more desperate. Secret meetings were held, plots were formed, and alliances against humans were made quietly under the flag of preserving balance. But this time, humans were not blind. They had learned from their past. They placed watchers in the shadows, formed silent defenses, and waited. When the first strike came, humanity was ready, not with rage, but with precision. They stopped the attacks, exposed the lies, and forced a galaxy that had once feared their potential to now face their truth. The warning of the elders had never been about destruction. It had been about resistance to change. Humanity's rise was not a threat. It was a challenge to old systems, old fears, and old power. The truth behind the warning was simple. Humans were not the danger. The fear of them was. And that fear had caused more destruction than humanity ever did. In the end, the galaxy changed, not through war, but through realization. The council restructured, giving voice to younger species. Knowledge was made free. Progress became a shared goal instead of a controlled secret. And humanity, with all its flaws and fire, became not rulers of the stars, but the reason they kept shining. What the elders had feared was not the return of an empire. It was the awakening of a species that had once been silenced and had now remembered who they truly were. And this time, nothing would erase them again. After the truth behind the ancient warning was finally revealed, and the galaxy saw that humanity was not the destroyer but the key to transformation, a silent tension spread through the stars. The old council, once made up of the eldest and most traditional species, had lost the trust of many as the hidden truths and secret manipulations came into light. Entire civilizations questioned the systems they had blindly followed for centuries. It wasn't just about humans anymore. It was about change, fairness, and the right to grow without fear. The humans did not rise with weapons or armies, but with knowledge, vision, and unstoppable will. They rebuilt broken alliances, healed wounded worlds, and opened doors that had been locked for too long. New species that were once ignored or looked down upon found support and voice through the humans. The balance of power slowly shifted, not with battles, but with ideas that echoed across every planet, every station, every council hall. And when the time came to form something new, something better, it was humanity that led the way. Not alone, but with others who shared the same dream. They proposed the Unity Accord, a foundation for a new order where no species would be above another, where decisions would be made by reason, not fear, and where knowledge would be shared, not hoarded. The proposal shocked many, especially the old powers who had ruled for thousands of years. They feared they would lose everything, but some among them, wiser than the rest, saw it not as a loss but a second chance. They stepped forward, joining the new alliance, and with that, a wave of change swept across the galaxy. The first gathering of the new Galactic Assembly was unlike anything seen before. No hierarchy, no thrones, no walls between species. The hall was filled with beings of every kind, from giants with glowing eyes to tiny creatures who spoke through light pulses. And at the center stood the human ambassador, a young woman named Ilara Quinn, whose voice carried not only the weight of her people but the hope of countless others. She did not speak of power or control, but of unity, fairness, and progress. Her words were simple, yet powerful. She reminded them that true strength comes not from ruling others, but from lifting them up. She spoke of a galaxy where children of any species could dream of the stars and actually reach them, where no voice would be silenced just because it was different. Her speech lit a fire in the hearts of many, and when the final vote was cast, the Unity Accord passed with overwhelming support. That moment marked the end of the old order and the beginning of something entirely new. There were still some who resisted, who clung to the past, who whispered in shadows about taking back control. But the galaxy had already turned its face toward the future, and their whispers grew weaker with time. The new order was not perfect. There were disagreements, challenges, and failures, but it was alive, evolving, and built on the courage of those who chose cooperation over control. Research centers were opened where species worked together on solving universal problems. Cultural exchange hubs flourished, letting beings learn from each other instead of fearing one another. A shared defense force was formed, not to conquer, but to protect peace, and for the first time in galactic history, the word unity felt real. As the years passed, the impact of the new order was undeniable. Entire planets once forgotten by the old council became thriving centers of science, trade, and art. Species that once hid in the shadows now stood proudly in leadership roles. Even the oldest empires, though slower to change, began to soften, understanding that this new way was not their end but their beginning. Humanity, while still growing, never claimed the center. They refused the title of rulers, choosing instead to be guides, partners, and guardians of balance. They remembered the pain of being feared, and they made sure no other species would suffer the same. A symbol was created to represent the new order, a circle of stars, different in shape and color, all revolving around a shared light. That light represented hope, wisdom, and the fire of unity. And though many contributed to this new age, all knew in their hearts that it was humanity who had lit that fire. But Ilara, now older and still serving the assembly, would always say one thing when asked about humanity's rise. We did not come to lead. We came to remember who we were and help others remember who they could be. These words became the motto of the new age, printed across stations, schools, and monuments. The galaxy was still vast, still full of unknowns, but now it moved forward together, no longer ruled by fear, but guided by shared dreams. And so a new order began, not written in blood or war, but in the voices of those who chose hope over history, and in the quiet strength of a species who had once been forgotten, but had returned to help everyone rise.